This video will reveal the locations for all 19 missable enemies in the Pixel Remaster version of Final Fantasy III. The Nepto dragon is easily missable as there is a special trick to adding it to your Bestiary. You can only encounter this enemy before you beat the Nepto temple. Instead of heading inside this dungeon, you need to ride the ship upwards to the canal to trigger the fight. During the encounter, you need to run away. If you manage to escape successfully, then the Nepto dragon will be registered in the Bestiary. You will be able to refight it again at any time from the main menu afterwards. The killer fish is one of the many enemies you will encounter in the Middle Sea section of the floating continent. Make sure you defeat one before you fly your airship over Saronia, since you won't be able to explore any of the seas afterwards. The Hermit is another enemy found in the Middle Sea section on the floating continent. You need to defeat one before Saronia. Also exclusive to the Middle Sea of the floating continent is the sea elemental enemy. You need to find and defeat one before you lose the ability to set sail. You should also encounter the Tangie at some point in the Middle Sea area of the floating continent. Make sure you have one defeated before Saronia. The last of the Middle Sea enemies found on the floating continent is Sahagin. You need to beat one of these before heading to Saronia. On the many seas located on the outer edges of the floating continent, you will be able to fight Anet. This enemy will disappear once you lose the ability to sail. The Mermaid is another enemy you will find in the outer seas of the floating continent. Make sure you add it to your Bestiary before going to Saronia. The Seahorse is the final common enemy you can encounter in the outer seas of the floating continent. You need to defeat at least one before Saronia. The sea serpent is a rare encounter in the outer seas of the floating continent. You should have a better chance of finding it in the seas of the second world. You must get this bestiary entry before going to Saronia. Castle Hine is a one-time dungeon where you can only fight the Pharaoh. So make sure you beat one before finishing it. Another enemy that can only be found in Castle Hine is the Lemur. Make sure you add it to the Bestiary before beating the dungeon. You can also find the Lamia in Castle Hine as well. You need to beat one before completing the dungeon. The demon is also exclusive to Castle Hine. The enemy will disappear along with the dungeon if you don't add it to your Bestiary in time. The Dullahan is another enemy that can only be found in Castle Hine. You will most likely find it in the small room on the third floor with a chest that contains the royal sword. The Ogre is an exclusive enemy in Doga's Grotto. You need to defeat one before beating the bosses and leaving this dungeon for good. You will also find the Cyclops in Doga's Grotto. Make sure you add it to your Bestiary before leaving the area. The Nemesis is also exclusively found in Doga's grotto. Beat it before leaving the dungeon. The last enemy that can only be fought in Doga's grotto is Humbaba. You should add it to the Bestiary before you get locked out of this location. If this video helped you out, then you can support this channel by clicking on the like button.